Welcome, everybody, to Season 2, Episode 41 of the Primetime Fantasy Podcast. This is a late night special. We're re-editing the show with some breaking news. If you were up last night at Thursday, at 11:30 a.m., you saw the news. We saw the news. We went back. We had to talk about it. It's too big of news not to talk about. Our entire show was done, but we could not wait till Sunday. Christian McCaffrey has been traded to the San Francisco 49ers for a monster package. I think it's a second-round pick, a third, a fourth, and a fifth, something like that. It's a monster package. Has huge fantasy implications. The running back one in fantasy football right now, a top 3 pick.
Benjamin rushing touchdown.
Did he just score?
Yes, he did.
Again?
I guess so.
Where'd you see that?
I got an ESPN notification.
That might be late. He didn't score again. Unless my feed is really late. My feed has to be really late. You just got me excited for no reason.
Well, I got excited for no reason.
Anyway, the game's still going on. This is the nuts that we are dealing with at the moment. But anyway, Nick, let's talk to you first. You have Christian McCaffrey. You picked him first overall. He's not playing this week. I do want to let you guys know there is 0% chance he plays this week for any football team. He's not playing. So if you're a Christian McCaffrey owner, this kind of does suck for you a little bit because now he basically has 2 bye weeks. But with that said,
he only gets the one. He didn't have a bye yet.
But the 49ers another bye.
Oh, well, yeah. I got you. Okay.
So, Nick, how does it make you feel if you're a Christian McCaffrey owner? How should you feel about this move? I mean, the next matchup is against the Rams next week, by the way.
So my initial reaction was I was pumped because, Christian McCaffrey going to a true competitor, a real team, a real football team, a real organization with a real coach that knows how to run the football. Like, this is a perfect situation for him, and it could be. The flip side is he's going to the team that has the most injuries at the running back position over the last 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and 4 years in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey is one of the least durable running backs that we've seen in modern NFL history. As to quote him, every time I take a leak, I'm pretty much end up on the injury report. The 49ers, they know how to use the running backs, but they always rotate the guy they like. Elijah Mitchell's going to come back. Jeff Wilson, I'm not saying, I don't think Christian McCaffrey is going to have the monster workload that he did. I don't think you're going to see the 70 to 80% target share, snap share. Like, I don't think you're going to see that Christian McCaffrey here. What you might see is a Christian McCaffrey closer to Cam Newton when he was putting up 20 touchdowns in a season, but I don't think you're going to see the 5 to 10 catches. I don't think you're going to see the 20 rushing attempts a game. Like, I don't think you're going to see the workload. I think you're going to see the touchdown upside increase. I am a little concerned because it is a new situation. It's a new team, and there wouldn't be a more perfect team for a running back to get traded to, except with the extensive injury history. I am a little concerned. If you're receiving trade offers for Christian McCaffrey, come to Sunday's episode and drop them there because I do think there's a lot of upside in trading him off of this trade and off the hype of it.
I think I echo all of your thoughts. The 49ers have a lot of mouths to feed on that offense. George Kittle, top 3 tight end in the league. Deebo Samuel still is a top 9 fantasy wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk had 100 yards last week. There's a lot of mouths to feed on this team. And Christian McCaffrey's a superstar. You're not trading all this away not to use him. However, still have Jimmy Garoppolo on that team, still have Kyle Shanahan coaching that team. I just don't see them fully going in on running the ball at McCaffrey. And they could, but I don't see this being a situation where it's a Christian McCaffrey show where it was in Carolina. He was on a bad football team that always was playing from behind. He'd catch a lot of balls. They needed to score points. The 49ers can end up being up in a lot of games, and that could be more rushing attempts for McCaffrey, but they know his injury history, and they want to win a Super Bowl now. Like, their window is in the next 2 years, I think. I can't imagine the Super Bowl window being, more than that, depending on how they draft and stuff like that. But they are a win now team. They're using the Rams formula where you trade for a star, You go all in, and you try to win the Super Bowl. I can't imagine them being up, 15 points in the game and saying, let's go use McCaffrey when you still have Jeff Wilson on the roster. You still have Elijah Mitchell is going to come back from the IR. You still have durable running backs that Shanahan can use. Why would you use Christian McCaffrey besides his talent if you're up, 15 points already in the game? So I think this could also work against McCaffrey. Do I still think he finishes as a top 5 running back if he stays healthy? Yes, I do. Could it be eclipsed as the number one? Of course. This is going to be a tricky situation to navigate. Really not going to know much for, the first 2 weeks. He'll still be electric. He'll still be a superstar. I'm very intrigued to see how Kyle Shanahan uses him, considering he hasn't used his running backs as efficiently as he probably could. He likes using Kyle Juszczyk on the goal line. He likes doing little shuffle passes to Debo and Ayuk, etc. So I'm interested to see where his stats come and where the play comes. But he's going to play on a much better football team. With that said, you're going to learn this later on in the show. Again, the show is re-edited. It's 11:30 at night. I'm going to have to re-edit the entire show basically because of this. But me and Nick wanted to go, into this a little bit before, so you listen to it tomorrow morning. With that said, I do have Jeff Wilson on my all boom team. And I still say that for this week. Still like the matchup. McCaffrey's not playing, obviously. So this is, still a Jeff Wilson week. After this week, Jeff Wilson is absolutely irrelevant. That's the reality of it. On the Carolina side, what running back do you want? Because all the signs pointed to Dante Foreman, and that's who I went and scooped up in 4 out of my 5 leagues at least.
Yeah, I went to go pick up Foreman in each of the leagues. I think he was the clear going to be the handcuff. I mean, no one's replacing Christian McCaffrey. You saw it last year. They drafted Chuba Hubbard knowing that McCaffrey had the injuries in his the prior year. They drafted him fairly early on with the draft pick. And he had the chance to be the handcuff, and he could not pull it off. There is no one in the NFL that can replicate what Christian McCaffrey does. He is the most unique running back in the NFL. Maybe Austin Eckler, but even Eckler is not as talented as Christian McCaffrey. This backfield is going to be annoying to navigate. I picked up Deontay Foreman. I think that's the better play, but you're going to see probably see a 50-50 timeshare. They're going to go pick up another running back off the waivers to go plug in. They probably won't be implemented this week, like we said, but next week. So it's going to be an annoying backfield to navigate. I would roster Deontay Foreman, but they are going up against Tampa Bay, who has been the best team against running backs this week. So I still wouldn't be looking to play them. I just think you got to stash him for the week and see what happens.
I wouldn't start Foreman this week. Bad matchup. I would pick him up, but I wouldn't roster. I wouldn't start him this week.
I'm very surprised that I do think that this is going to tip a domino. I think that Cam Akers is going to wind up being on the move next. I'm surprised that they didn't try to send him over to Carolina. We might see some rumors about
They may have tried to, but who knows?
Who knows?
Anyway, I mean, I don't know if you have any more to say. That's I think that kind of covers everything, but it's huge news at 11:30 at night. It didn't seem like he was going to get dealt. I really didn't think he was going to go, especially without a first-round pick and no first-round pick. Did that surprise you at all? I mean, I know he's older, but it still surprised me they couldn't get one first.
I didn't think that he was going to get the first. They got a similar package to what the Jets were willing to give for Tyreek, where it was 5. The Jets were willing to give 5 picks in between the 2nd and 5th round for Tyreek, and instead it's 4 picks and a large contract, an older running back with injury history.
Yeah.
I think the 49ers gave up a lot, but like we said,
I think they did, but at the same time, assuming they're going to finish where they finish, that 2nd round pick is going to be late. It's really going to be a 3rd round pick, I believe, unless
and they have every chance to win that division now.
Right. So
the division's open.
Right. So, we'll see where that goes in the future. We'll see what happens with Cam. But anyway, yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to re-edit this at the moment. So I'm not sure I'm not sure what you're going to hear next. I think you're going to actually hear the intro again, maybe, and then right into our show that we had planned. But enjoy the rest of the show, guys. We put a lot of work into it earlier today. It's a really fun and long show, but we wanted to make sure we got this news in there and didn't make you wait until Sunday to hear our thoughts. So enjoy the show, guys. We'll keep talking McCaffrey on Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Join our live. We're going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy it. And McCaffrey owners, let us know what you think, because I'm curious if you're a McCaffrey owner and what you think about this. So enjoy the show. We'll talk to you guys on Sunday.
Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to Season 2, Episode 41 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail in Week 7 and the rest of the 2022 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, our Friday show is always a ton of fun. We have a lot of injuries. We have our boom bust teams. We have our flex on them segment that I haven't even looked at. So this Nick has done the flex on them, and I'm going in blind, which is actually kind of fun since I usually do it. And we're recording during Thursday Night Football. So Nick, I don't think you have a monitor over there. I have my big TV over here though. So
no, I did not load the game up. I am all PrimeTime.
I will be providing updates.
Sounds good.
Do you have anybody playing?
If you got some Kyler Murray, Benjamin, Zach Ertz, and Taysom Hill updates, I'd be happy to hear them.
Yeah, I have and Kyler as well as Chris Olave. So a lot of fun. You know what else is a lot of fun? Our Sunday morning shows, 8:30 a.m. every single Sunday. We have one coming up this Sunday for Week 7. We love doing them. We love giving you guys fantasy advice. We love talking with you guys. We usually go from 8:30 to 9:30, sometimes 10. Just depends on, how many questions are being asked and stuff like that. But that's on our Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Facebook and YouTube is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Twitter is PrimeTimeFFPod. Please join us for that 8:30 a.m. on Sunday. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so much. We do this audio and video show on a normal weekly basis on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, with Fridays being our biggest episode to prepare you for the upcoming fantasy football week. You can find the show on all audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Anchor, basically anywhere where you find a podcast, you find us, the Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Kyler just got sacked, by the way, but it's a flag, so probably a hold. Anyway, if you're on Spotify or Apple, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. We really appreciate that. If you're on YouTube and you'd rather, watch the show, go to our YouTube channel, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Drop a like on this video if you're watching it. Drop a like on any video that you watch and enjoy on our channel. We'd appreciate that. Keep connecting and interacting with us on social media, Primetime FFPod, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, then Facebook and YouTube is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Okay, news and injury updates. Let's get to the news first, and then we'll give you our injury report from the Thursday practices since we are recording on Thursday night. I'm going to need a breath soon, and that's a good thing because we do have a point that Nick really wants to talk about. So let's start off with who's on bye this week. The Buffalo Bills, Los Angeles Rams, Minnesota Vikings, and Philadelphia Eagles. There's probably 2 or 3 fantasy relevant players from each of those teams. So I think it is more. Yeah, probably. So it's pretty significant bye weeks. Yours truly has Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp on bye. That's miserable. It's so miserable knowing I'm walking into an L in that league. But anyway, so gonna live with it. Our first bit of news. I really do need to take a drink, so I'm glad that this is the first bit of news. Elijah Moore has requested a trade. The Jets have no plans at all to trade him. The 4-2 Jets, by the way, their best start in 8 years, maybe something like that. Anyway, resident Jets fan, Nick Cap is probably going to talk a little bit from a Jets standpoint and also from a fantasy standpoint while I take a drink of water. So let's hear it, Cap. What do you got?
This is ludicrous. I have no idea why Elijah Moore is being such a little fucking whine baby about this. First off, for all the receivers, so I thought about it. I was like, right, like I was high on Elijah Moore going into the year. Like he's a beast. Like he's a phenomenal receiver. He's not creating separation, so that's not only on him. Through the first 6 weeks in all 6 games where he played, he has the highest snap share of any wide receiver on the Jets. He has the most total snaps played. He has the second most targets, only 4 behind the next guy. And he's doing all this whining. Elijah Moore, and I hate this because I was such a big fan of his. Like, he lost every single ounce of my respect. Like, it's the whole thing of, would you rather be the worst player on a team that's winning a title or the best player on a team that has no chance to win at all? At the end of the day, this team is 4-2. This team is off to the best start that they've ever had. And Elijah Moore seemed to be a real leader last year when the Jets were absolutely pathetic. I have lost every ounce of respect I have for him. I want the Jets to trade him. I don't mind if we trade him for DJ Moore. I don't care if I wouldn't mind trading him to the Giants and trying to get Kadarius Toney in return. I have no problem trading him. And Joe Douglas has proven if he goes and trades for draft picks, he's going to hit on those. He's hit on every first 4 rounds of picks over the last 2 years. I have no problem with Elijah Moore hitting the can. The Jets actually have a very deep receiving core. Not fantasy friendly, but definitely friendly for that team and that football team. So Elijah Moore lost my respect. Absolutely. You got to go earn that back if you're going to stay on this team, because I would not be surprised if Denzel Mims got activated this week and outsnapped you, because that was an absolute smack to the face to your organization, your receiving core, and the rest of your team, who is riding on a high while you are still playing an extraordinary amount of snaps.
And I think Denzel Mims wants to trade too. I think I saw that.
He said that for the last 2 years, but the fact is he has been nothing more like he requested a trade for genuinely not seeing the field. Elijah Moore has the highest snap count, and Denzel Mims on top of that, like he's been a world-class player for the organization. He hasn't spoke up against them publicly. Like he hasn't done anything like Elijah Moore is doing right now. Like it's baffling. The dude's played 17 NFL games, missed 6 to injury, comes back. They make him the wide receiver, want to give him the most snaps. I don't want to hear it. It's absolutely ludicrous that he's acting like this.
Yeah, I think my issue with this from an NFL standpoint is you're unproven. You're in your second year, and he showed flashes last year. Don't get me wrong, but you're not AJ Brown. You're not DeAndre Hopkins. You're not like you are not an elite star wide receiver. That's not who you are. And I bash the Jets for reasons, but like he hasn't played well, like this year at least. Other receivers have had 100-yard games. Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Conklin. Like we've seen Jets players play well from a fantasy and NFL standpoint. Elijah Moore hasn't. So to go out there when you're 4-2 and request a trade, like you're in your second year, you only played a total of 10 games, maybe.
You played 17 games total so far.
You don't have that leverage.
No.
Was he a first-round pick or no?
Early second, like it would have been like
you do not have that leverage. You don't. So ridiculous. But from a fantasy standpoint, if he goes anywhere else, where would you like to see him go? Assuming the Jets don't get a receiver back, let's just assume. Where would you like to see Elijah?
Where do I want to see him now go? Now that he disrespected my organization, I hope he's a Houston Texan next year. I hope he has to spend the rest of his year there, the rest of his career there, being absolutely miserable for a loser organization where he can go rack up 10 targets a game and go get 3 or 4 catches because of inaccurate and terrible quarterback play. In all seriousness,
send them to the Denver Broncos. They're riding high.
In all seriousness, like where do I think he would fit well? Probably the Rams or Green Bay. I know he's a young receiver, so Aaron Rodgers doesn't really like that, but he would easily be the wide receiver one over there. And the Rams do need a deep threat. I know they got the offense clicking a little bit, and now they're going into the bye. But if they can't get Odell, and because Odell does want a good amount of money, Elijah Moore should only be like a second and a mid-round, like a second and a fourth or a second and a fifth round draft pick. So at the end of the day, they might as well spend that capital and get a speed demon, good slot receiver. Like they can move him around the field, and he'd honestly be a perfect fit over there.
All right. Moving on, Mac Jones expects to be available Monday night versus the Bears, and the Patriots will start him when healthy. There's no quarterback controversy. I don't believe in that. I don't believe anything that comes out of the Patriots organization. I believe what I see on the field. So I think that Zeppi has a chance to remain the starter, but we'll see what happens. Jahan Dotson re-injured his hamstring at practice, limped off the field and missed the rest of practice. Probably going to be out another 2 weeks, I would say. I think in redraft leagues, I think he's very droppable at this point. Yep. I don't think he's rosterable at this point. If you're in a keeper league or dynasty, that's a different story.
I completely agree.
Our favorite coach on the planet, Mr. Nathaniel Hackett, said the Broncos are preparing Russell Wilson, Brett Ripien, and Josh Johnson to play this Sunday against the Jets with Russ' status up in the air. Russ also claims that he's Wolverine. You're not Logan, dude. Like, no, you are not Wolverine. I wish I had a superhero analogy that I could line up right now. You're probably like Steve Rogers, really. But Steve Rogers also like a pain in the ass. Oh, there's no way they ran the backup running back. You've got to be fucking kidding me, dude. Didn't even run Eno Benjamin. They ran the backup running back. I have Eno and Kyler. That gets me nothing. I hate this team. Kingsbury, you're on my shit list. He's on my shit list. He's 100% on my shit list. Unbelievable. Anyway, I think Russell Wilson plays. I think he plays poorly. The Broncos are a mess. That's what I got out of this.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Kadarius Toney had a long interview with the media saying he believes he can be an elite player once he returns, and that the coaching staff in the front office has given him no negative feedback. That's wonderful, but I need to kind of see you on the field. Hollywood Brown officially goes on IR. That means you can put him on your IR spot if you have him. Kyler misses Hopkins on the 2-point conversion. Oh, no, they're redoing it to flag. And Dak Prescott said he will start Sunday as we expected against the Lions. Now on to the injury report. Full practice. Jonathan Taylor, Naheem Hines. Taylor was the ankle. I think Hines was a concussion. T. Higgins with the ankle. Full practice. Looks like he's finally healthy after a couple weeks. Kenny Pickett cleared concussion protocol. He will start this week against Miami. Damian Harris had a first full practice since the hamstring injury. I'm not convinced he's going to play, but again, Patriots, they're the worst when it comes to this stuff for fantasy. CeeDee Lamb with a hip injury. Again, these are full practices. Amon-Ra with an ankle injury. So again, those are full practices. That means they will probably play Sunday. Should have no issues. Limited practice. Baker Mayfield, he's not going to play Sunday, but his practice limited. Jamar Chase with the hip, second day in a row that he was limited. He'll be fine. Russell Wilson, we just spoke about him. He's clearly impacted as he threw the ball, and Ripien took over in practice, but I think Russell Wilson's going to play. I can't see a situation where he actually sits. Who'd they run here? They run Eno. I think he fumbled. Whoever they ran just fumbled. Wonderful. Keenan Allen with a hamstring injury, his second day in a row, he was limited. I think he also said in an interview that he's considered sitting on Sunday because they have the bye week. So watch that one. Rashad Bateman with a foot injury, second day in a row that he's been limited. Looks like he's going to play his first game in a couple weeks. DeAndre Swift with the ankle and shoulder injury, he's pushing the play, second day limited. And Jalen Waddle with a shoulder injury was limited. He had a red non-contact jersey, but he should play Sunday night. Do not practices. J.K. Dobbins with a knee, second day in a row. This is just, again, we've spoken about it many times on the show. This is just a bad situation. Like, I got nothing. You're stuck with J.K. Dobbins at this point if you have him. Mark Andrews with a knee injury missed his second day in a row. John Harbaugh said it was a rest day, so you got to see if he practices on Friday. If he misses practice Friday, then we're in trouble, but if not, he should be good to go. If he does miss practice, make sure you pick up Isaiah Likely. Should have a huge game. Huge game.
Yep.
Darren Waller with a hamstring injury missed his second straight practice. Go pick up Foster Moreau if you need a tight end streamer. He was effective last year when Darren Waller was out. Hunter Renfrow, a new injury to hip injury, missed it on Thursday. And Tyler Lockett with a hamstring injury misses his second straight practice. Lockett also missed time last week with a hamstring injury, but did play. So again, that's going to be one to monitor. Okay. Moving on to our all boom and all bust teams for week 7. I want to preface this, okay? I want to preface this because for those that don't actually listen to the pod, I get it, and see the graphics, me and Nick had 5 of the same players on our all boom and 2 of the same on our all bust. So they were changed. Nick has his complete all boom team. I will let you know which players we both selected, but there were many players we were both very, very high on. So I do want to note that. Because I did scratch the barrel a little bit for some of these guys, but that's okay. Anyway, Nick, who is your all boom quarterback? I don't know Nick's all boom quarterback. This is not one we had the same on. So
Nick does not know my all boom quarterback, my wide receiver 2, and one of my flexes. He would have known all 4 of my flexes, but I gave him one of them. So
I don't think I know one of your receivers.
No. There's going to be 2 receivers you don't. Well, I guess you won't know both my receivers.
Anyway, I definitely don't know the quarterback.
So for my quarterback, I am rolling with man off the injury, off the throwing hand. I'm going with Dak Prescott. The Cowboys offense has not been great without Dak in there. And it's been due purely off QB play. Cooper Rush in the 6-game span that he played averaged 6 yards per pass and under 200 passing yards per game. These stats rank bottom 10 amongst all starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Last year, Dak averaged 280 passing yards per game and 2.5 touchdowns. This offense now gets the opportunity, gets back together with Dak Prescott up against the Detroit Lions, who have allowed the most points per game to the quarterback position. Dak couldn't have asked for a friendly or warmer return than this matchup. Expect him to go off, expect him to boom. He's been listening on the sidelines for 4 to 5 weeks that there's a quarterback controversy with a guy that's been a perennial backup. He is coming back with a vengeance. He is going to go off for your fantasy teams.
All right. For me, my all-boom quarterback is Matt Ryan. He's facing the Tennessee Titans, who have given up the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. The last time he faced Tennessee was 3 weeks ago, and he had over 20 fantasy points. I think he had 21. And last week, Matt Ryan finally hit his stride and had 29 fantasy points. I think they were against Jacksonville last week. So it seems like Matt Ryan's starting to, hit his footing in the offense. I think he's at over 300 yards for 3 out of the 6 games that have been played. I think it's a good play this week. If you have him as a backup like I do, I'm slotting him in for Jalen Hurts this week. I think you're going to be pretty pleased with the number you're going to get. And Michael Pittman's a really good play as well. I did not put him on this team or Alec Pierce, but I think they're both good plays this week. I think the Colts are starting to kind of hit their groove as Matt Ryan is hitting his groove. So I think we do running backs first normally. Who is your first running back boom? This is one that me and Nick both definitely had on our all boom team. So
here I have for my RB1, someone that I think is going to finish as a top 3 running back on the week. I have Josh Jacobs. He's been absolutely dominant for fantasy football, averaging close to 20 points per game on the entire season. And now he gets to come off a bye week. And the last 2 games, which he has been absolutely dominant, he saw 49 total carries, nearly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, all on the ground, in the air. He saw 10 catches for 70 yards. Those put up monster stat lines. Now he gets a week's rest, gets to go up against the Houston Texans, who have allowed the most points to the running back position, most points per game because they were on bye last week, but the most points per game to the running back position nonetheless. Josh Jacobs has the potential to go absolutely nuclear. Houston, you are going to have a problem.
You're going to have a problem. Yep. Again, Nick said every note that I would have said as well. So my first running back boom, I'm picking Najee Harris. Now, I don't think he's going to boom. All right. However, I think he's going to boom for Najee standards in terms of what he scored this year. And he hasn't been terrible. He's had over double digits in 4 out of 6 games, but he hasn't been the first round pick that you expected. With that said, though, 3 running backs out of the 6 that have faced the Dolphins have boomed. They've had over 17 fantasy points. Those 3, Breece Hall, Joe Mixon, and Dalvin Cook. I think Najee Harris is just as talented, if not more talented, than those 3 guys. The 3 running backs that did not boom against the Dolphins were the Patriots running back that played week 1, whether it's Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson, they split. The Baltimore running backs that all split on week 2, and the Buffalo running backs, which is, Devin Singletary, who's not bad, but they're not a run-first team at all. So with that said, on the 3 teams that are run first and that have a star running back, all 3 boom for 17 plus fantasy points. On top of that, the Dolphins have given up, I believe, the 11th most fantasy points to running backs. They're 10 or 11. They're right in there. And on top of all of that, it is a Brian Flores revenge game. I know he's not an offensive coach by any means, but Tomlin's boys with him, I could see them really trying to, make a statement against the Dolphins this weekend on PrimeTime on Sunday Night Football. So with that said, I think Najee could really have his first complete game of the season and his first 15-point game of the season, which shouldn't be a boom game for Najee, but that's the world that we live in. That's my boom game for Najee Harris. So, Nick, how about you talk about the second running back that we both really believed in this week?
Also on Nick's team, or would have been on Nick's team, I have Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke, you guys know I love stacking my quarterbacks with my running backs on these teams. I'm rolling out Zeke. He has not been great for fantasy so far, but once again, you have to blame it on quarterback play. The Cowboys are currently averaging the 27th yards per game and 23rd points per game, giving Zeke significantly less portion to or less opportunity to score on a week-to-week basis. Last year, when Dak was healthy, the Cowboys averaged the most fantasy points, or the most actual NFL points per game, and ranked and totaled over 7,000 total yards. With Cooper Rush, they're on pace to only score, or to only have 5,400 yards on the year. I expect Zeke to get so much more usage in the passing game. I expect him to have so much higher potential for a touchdown. And once again, there's no better get-right game than the Detroit Lions defense. Zeke is going to get right. Zeke is going to have a monster fantasy day. Zeke is going to show you why Zeke is Ezekiel Elliott.
So my second running back boom is actually one that me and Nick both really did believe in, and that's Ramondre Stevenson. Assuming he does start, which I think he's going to start on Monday. The Bears have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. The Bears defense is really bad. They've also allowed 1,000 rushing yards and through the last 6 games and 9 touchdowns. On top of that, Ramondre Stevenson had 25 fantasy points last week. He scored over 19 in 3 of his last 4. Over those last 4 games, 60 carries, 17 targets, 450 all-purpose yards, and 3 touchdowns. There's nothing that should show you that Ramondre Stevenson should not have a big game on Monday night. He might be the only fantasy-relevant player playing on Monday Night Football. So if you need a Monday night miracle, Ramondre Stevenson may be the one you need to pray to on Monday night. Who is your first wide receiver boom of week 7?
Nick, I loved this team, and then they let their quarterback go. Their quarterback stunk, but the new quarterback has been even better. I am rooting with the Seattle Seahawks this week.
Oh, yeah, baby. Geno Smith. Didn't write him off.
I think DK is going to have a monster week. Last week, Russ got absolutely shut down by the Chargers. I think DK and that Seattle team is going to go say, we're going to go make another statement here. We're going up against the Chargers, who just shut down Russell Wilson. You're our former all-generational talent, where our team's going to crumble without him. Well, you haven't. You've been a very good team. And Pete Carroll going to go out there, make a statement. The Chargers secondary ranks bottom 10 against wide receivers. On top of that, Tyler Lockett is dealing with a massive hamstring injury. He's missed back-to-back practices, missed some time in the last game. And as we all know, Seattle does not have a deep wide receiving core. DK Metcalf is going to have to take a lot of that workload, a lot more than you think. And this is coming from a guy that's been averaging 8 targets per game this entire year and close to 70 yards. Over the last 4 games as well, the team's averaging 28 points per game. So they're putting up points, and DK's being the pivotal leader on the outside for them. I think that there's a lot of upsides for touchdown his way. I think there's a lot of chance for Seattle to really make a statement. I'm calling my near upset alert because I don't think they're going to be able to outduel the Chargers offense, but I do think they're going to keep this game a lot closer than people think. And that's going to make sure that DK has another dominant fantasy week.
I love it. I love the take. I hope it happens. I love watching Geno. I get so excited to watch Geno every Sunday. He's electric. My wide receiver boom of the week is CeeDee Lamb. My first note is the Lions are capital BAD bad. They're very bad. They've allowed the most points in the league. That's total points. They've allowed the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers. The last 2 wide receiver ones that they faced were Jacoby Myers and DK Metcalf. Both of them had over 24 fantasy points. Sorry, Lions. Play the Cowboys this week. Your Cowboys going to play well, and the Lions are just they're not a great week to play your Lions or to be a Lions fan. It's not going to be good. So, but CeeDee Lamb, if you're a CeeDee Lamb owner and you held on for the past 6 weeks, you're in luck. This will be the boom game that you've been waiting for. Who is your second wide receiver boom for week 7?
Oh, Nick, you always love when I ask you these questions. So I know you didn't know this guy, so I figured I'd slide in a question for you. So this mystery player is quietly having a very good, consistent fantasy year. Over the last 4 weeks, he's been averaging 70 yards per game on 8 targets per game, has 3 touchdowns over that 4-game span. He's the wide receiver 1 on his team, and he's coming off of an injury where he missed the first game of the year. Do you know who this wide receiver is?
I was going to say Godwin, but it's not Godwin because he played. He's a wide receiver 1. He missed the first game of the season. I'm trying to think. It wasn't Keenan Allen. Man, I'm a bit stomped on the one that missed the first game of the season. Who is it? Who do we got?
So just to before I tell you the player's name, those stats fall right in line with DK Metcalf's over the last 4-game span. So I think DK has 2 touchdowns. This guy has 3, both averaging 8 targets per game and both averaging 70 yards per game. It is the Packers' number 1 receiver, Allen Lazard. He has quietly been incredibly consistent, and I think he's a perfect trade for candidate this week before he goes off right against the Washington Commanders. We've allowed the 6th most points to the wide receiver position. It's one of the best matchups you could have, and when you take out the Bears matchup with the Commanders, they actually gave up the 2nd most points per game to the wide receiver position. Not just the Lions. So we all saw that Thursday night game. That's the only reason that they're ranked as low as 6th. But without that matchup, it's number 2 to the Lions. So just shows you Aaron Rodgers going up against this defense. Great opportunity. Allen Lazard could have his biggest game of the year this week.
So was that the one you just slotted in today for Stevenson? I'm just curious.
No.
Okay.
It was DK I slotted in, actually.
Oh, because of the Lockett injury.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. My second one is T. Higgins. It's a guy that Nick has not been super duper high on, and I think he made more fantasy points than Jamar Chase. If he doesn't, he's close. They're neck and neck. He hasn't had a bad season. The ankle injury sidelined him a little bit, but now he looks fully healthy, and he's going up against the Atlanta Falcons, who are fighters. I'll give you that. As an NFL team, they are fighters, but they have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. On top of that, they've allowed 2 wide receivers on every team to go double digits against them. 4 out of the 6 teams they faced have gone, had 2 receivers go over double digits. So with that said, a lot of points to go around for the wide receivers, a lot of points to go around for both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Hayden Hurst is another sneaky play over there. Joe Burrow is going to have a great day as well. Play your Bengals this week, but I think Higgins is going to have that rebound that you've been waiting for these past 3 or 4 weeks. All right, we are on to the flexes. So who's your first flex boom of the week?
Another guy that Nick wanted, but unfortunately I was able to sneak him into my lineup before Nick was. He was my must start last week, and I'm absolutely running it back this week. I am doing another stack, not conventional to do the running back wide receiver stack, but DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker, going to be the only 2 sustainable options for an offense that's averaging 28 points per game. Last week in his first true start, 21 carries, 97 yards, and a touchdown, and he got a couple targets on top of it. The week before, when he got some of the workload, when Penny got work, put up close to 100 yards and a touchdown as well. I think this is a week he's going to exceed that 100-yard mark. He's once again going up against the Chargers, who have not been good to the running back position. They're currently ranked number 4. They ranked number 2 last week before the Denver Broncos decided that, we don't know how to run the ball anymore. We don't know which running back is the best at it. But
no, they want to ride the hot hand, remember?
They want to ride the hot hand. Yes, Nathaniel Hackett, who had a conversation with Melvin Gordon and decided
they had a real frank talk.
You're going to be the starter this week.
Yeah, they had a real frank talk over there.
But
Melvin Gordon has something over Nathaniel Hackett. I don't know if it's his nudes or something like that, but he has something over this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to continue to boom Kenneth Walker every week, but in lopsided matchups like this, I mean, you take that opportunity and you run just like Kenneth Walker will this week.
So what's funny is me and Nick have very different ways of going about these teams, and that's okay. I try not to use the same player 2 weeks in a row. Nick doesn't mind it. I also try not to stack. Nick does like to stack. So it is interesting how we, do things a little bit differently. I'm going to run somebody 2 weeks in a row right here. I'm going to go with one of my only players that did not boom last week. I think 2 of my players on my team didn't, and this was one of them. And that's going to be my notes just decided to absolutely crash on me. Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson has a double-digit fantasy points in 5 of his last 6 matchups, last week being the only one that it was a bad game for San Francisco all around. The receivers got involved, but they lost to the Falcons by 2 scores. It was a bad game. And I think they get on track here. They play in Kansas City. The last time they played them in the Super Bowl in a very close game. The Chiefs have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to running backs this season. Last 3 running backs are Josh Jacobs, Leonard Fournette, and Devin Singletary. They all had over 14 fantasy points. On top of that, to win this game, San Francisco has to control the clock. They have a top 3 or 5 defense in the league. They have to play defense. They have to run the ball. They have to run the clock out. That means a lot of work for Jeff Wilson. I hope he gets in the end zone. If he does get in the end zone, I think he's getting you 14, 15 fantasy points. If he doesn't, closer to 12 or 13, but I think he get into the end zone. I think he's a nice flex play this week. So who is your second flex play for week 7?
I'm rolling with me and Nick's number 1 waiver guy from this past week. I am rolling out Alec Pierce. He's been really good. He's been a very talented rookie wide receiver. In these 4 healthy games this year, he's averaging 5 catches on 7 targets for 70 yards. This is his second matchup with the Titans this year. Earlier this year, he posted 12 fantasy points against them, and that was with Michael Pittman, but coming off of the injury. And in both the games since with Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce has exceeded that 12 fantasy point number in both of those games. Like Nick said earlier about Matt Ryan, that offense is starting to hit its groove. It's starting to hit its stride. And I think this is a player you should be capitalizing on right now. He's been the safest and best week-to-week play so far this season against the Titans. This is his best matchup so far. Once again, allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. It's going to be probably your best opportunity to play him before the end of the year. Of course, he's going to have those Titans and those Jaguars layup matchups, but for right now, I mean, you lock him in against that division.
I have Amari Cooper as my second flex. He's averaging 10 targets a game, which is phenomenal. It's what you want in a PPR receiver. He's over double-digit fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 matchups, only had that 1 stinker game. And on top of that, he's facing the Baltimore Ravens, who have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. They do not have a good defense this year. Good opportunity to play a wide receiver every week against Baltimore. Good opportunity to play Amari Cooper in what should be a close divisional matchup game, I think. I think the Ravens are a very good football team, but again, with these divisional matchups, they usually end up being close. So should be a close one. Should be a good game for Amari Cooper. Nick, who is your tight end? Just absolute smash play of the week that I wanted to use as well. This is the number one tight end play of the week that's not named Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews.
I'm going to keep this short and sweet and right to the point. Gerald Everett, Seattle sucks against tight ends. Top 10 week.
Seattle,
to tight ends,
yes.
6 targets per game. I mean, there's no more smash mouth play at tight end than Gerald Everett.
And like Nick said, the Seahawks have allowed the most fantasy points to tight ends. I think they've allowed a tight end to go double digits like every week except for the Broncos week. So definitely play Gerald Everett this week if you can. For me, I have Evan Ingram. The Giants defense is stout. It's great. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. But when it comes to tight ends, they've allowed the 12th most fantasy points. On top of that, in the last 2 games, Evan Ingram's had 9+ fantasy points. It's a good streaming option. And my favorite thing about it is it's a revenge game. I do love revenge games. I have 2 of them on here with Flores and with Evan Ingram. Play him this week, and he might be able to get some revenge on the Giants and their fans who they don't like him. They really don't like Evan Ingram over there. Moving on to our all bust teams for week 7. Who's your quarterback?
If there's one thing I've learned in football, you don't bet against this guy, but I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. Tom Brady, you are going to bust this week. For fantasy, he's been all right. Like, he hasn't been great. He's a QB 14, but it's actually kind of misleading. He's averaging the 16th most fantasy points per game. And he's behind guys like Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz, and Trevor Lawrence, 3 guys that went undrafted in pretty much every league that you were in. The worst part is it's only that high because of 1 3-touchdown game. Outside of that, the rest of his games have been mediocre. He's had literally 1 touchdown in every single one of the other games. And he has scored under 15 in 4 of his 6 games so far. So he's not putting up stout fantasy numbers. He's putting up more mediocre than anything. And in what looks like would be a great opportunity against Carolina for him to have a big game, we thought the same thing with Atlanta, but he didn't. Instead, he gets the Carolina Panthers, who last year in both the games that he played threw 30 and 37 times. That might sound like a lot, but if you take a look at the last season, 30 passing attempts against Carolina was the least passing attempts he had in any game that season, and 37 would be the 4th lowest amount of passing attempts he had that season, meaning they're coming out early with a lead. They're running the clock. It's the playoff Lenny game. It's not going to be the Tom Brady game. I could see him putting up an average fantasy day. I can't see him putting up the 20-plus point bomb or like great game that you would think he'd have in this matchup.
I am going bold here, Nick. I am busting Patrick Mahomes.
I knew you were going to say it.
Of course. You know me too well. I love playing the matchups. The San Francisco 49ers are the 4th best defense against quarterbacks. It's a nightmare matchup for Mahomes, who's faced a couple cupcakes so far. They've held Matt Stafford and Russell Wilson to 8 points and 9 points, respectively. I know neither are having great seasons, but still, those are the best quarterbacks that San Francisco has faced. So that's what I can kind of drive off of. What I could also go off of is that in the Super Bowl that they played the 49ers in about, 2.5 years ago, roughly 3 years ago, something like that, Mahomes had 286 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Not a bad game, but not a great game. It's not a top 5 fantasy performance. With that said, for Mahomes to have a good Mahomes fantasy day, I think he has to score over 20 points, which he's done 4 times this season. So when I say I'm busting Mahomes, I'm saying he's scoring under 20 fantasy points. That's exactly what I'm saying. When you put Mahomes in your lineup, you're expecting over 20. That's the reality of it. If he scores under 20, to me, that's a bad game for Patrick Mahomes. That's not a bad game for every other quarterback out there. So I think Mahomes is a decent game. He'll still probably throw for 250 and 2 touchdowns, but I don't think he's throwing for 350 and 4 touchdowns. I don't think he's getting you 25 fantasy points. I think he's getting you closer to 17, which he had against the Colts. So that is my bust argument for Patrick Mahomes on the week. Who is your first running back bust of the week?
I hate to do this because I loved him all season so far, and Nick busted his quarterback, and now I gotta bust him. I am busting Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Over the last 2 weeks, he's sucked, for fantasy. But I don't blame him. I blame Andy Reid. And I know that's a bold statement, but he's not using who's been the most efficient running back in that Kansas City system since Jamal Charles. It's been absolutely ridiculous
Kareem
over the
Hunt.
last 2 weeks. He's only had 18 carries, which would be his 2 lowest of the season at 9 and 9, for 50 yards and no targets last week. They're just not using him the way they were in the first 4 games, which is when their offense was significantly more efficient. Now, did he have 2 rough matchups? Sure. Did he have to play Buffalo? Sure. But now he gets San Francisco, who is the second best team against running backs. So you could I think Clyde has all the talent in the world. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's very efficient. I think he's very good. But when you're not getting a lot of touches, you're not getting a lot of usage, and now you have a tough matchup, it's just a formula for disaster. I think Clyde, you have to fade this week. It's not a running back where I'm going to say temper your expectations. No, I think he belongs on the bench if you have another pivot.
Do you think Kareem Hunt would be better on the Chiefs right now?
Probably, because I think they would lock and load him as a 3-down back. I don't think they have that same faith in Clyde.
They don't. He was awesome over there in Kansas City, by the way. I miss him over there. Won me a fantasy football championship.
You had Kamara and him that year. That was
and Le'Veon Bell.
Throwback.
I had OBJ for 2 weeks, then he tore his ACL. My team was unbelievable. That was a fun.
That was probably the greatest team that ever walked through our 8-year league.
Yeah, that team is pretty sick. I don't know. The one I had 2 years ago when I had DK, Jefferson, Tyreek, Deontay Johnson. I think I had Aaron Jones and Zeke as well. That team was pretty good as well. That was when Russell Wilson was having an MVP season, then he fell off the face of the earth. Anyway, David Montgomery, you're getting busted. Facing the Patriots that always take away the number one option. That's what Bill Belichick does. Just did it to Nick Chubb, who only had 8 fantasy points. The Patriots are a top 3 or 4 team against the run when it comes to fantasy running backs. It's going to be a bad game script. The Patriots are going to be up a lot of points. The Bears won't be able to move the ball, especially after Bill Belichick spent 4 minutes praising how good the Bears are on offense. Unbelievable that he even took the time to do that. On top of that, the Patriots haven't allowed over 14 points to any running back this season. So, yep, not a good game for David Montgomery. Sit David. I would sit him. I know the position is thin, but if you have a better option out there, I would sit David Montgomery. Who's your second running back bust of the week?
I'm going with Travis Etienne. I still can't buy him as this. I still can't buy him as being the next, I guess, James Robinson, because James Robinson was there, was electric, was a monster for fantasy. Travis Etienne used a higher draft pick on, but for the last 2 years, James Robinson was very good. I'm still not back in the Travis Etienne take yet. I think he'll have a good rest of season. But in the last 2 weeks, he's only had 10 carries in each. He's been very efficient, but now he has the New York Giants, who rank top 10 against the running back position. I think if he's not given more opportunity, there's not much more points he's going to score. He would have to be efficient, just as efficient as he was in the last 2 games on that minimum amount of carries. In a game I think they're going to be trailing for the most part. It's going to be hard to hit double-digit points unless he finds the end zone. So usually if you are a touchdown or bust player outside of tight end, you're probably sitting on my bench. So same thing's going to have to fly here with Travis Etienne.
Would you bench James Robinson as well? Or are you just not high
on
him as a player?
It's both. But
all right,
Etienne's been the better back for the past 2 weeks.
Gotcha. I am busting DeAndre Swift. He's coming back from the injury. He's still banged up, and he's quote-unquote pushing to play. That means even if he does play, I think he's a bit limited. He's competing with Jamal Williams, who's had 2 or 3 really solid games without DeAndre Swift. And even when Swift was there, Jamal Williams was vulturing touchdowns. With that said, they're facing the Cowboys, who are the 6th best team against running backs. It's a nightmare matchup. I don't think Jared Goff's a good quarterback. I think when he faces a tough defense, they fold like they did against the New England Patriots. This leads me to believe this is going to be a bad game script. I think the Patriots will be up, not the Patriots, the Cowboys will be up, 2 or 3 scores. Not going to run the ball a lot. Why would they use their injured running back? If anything, they'll use Jamal Williams. I don't know who the Lions have next week, but this is just not the week to load up DeAndre Swift. I think some people have to play him. I have to play him in a league that I'm not doing too well in, but it's really tough to put him back in your lineup and expect more than 12 fantasy points.
Yeah.
Who is your first wide receiver boom of the week?
My bust of the week.
Bust, yes, bust. Yep, we done the booms already.
I'm doing another stack. I'm sorry, but I'm busting Juju Smith-Schuster. I had him for 5 weeks.
We've busted the entire Chiefs offense, not named Travis Kelce at this point.
Yep, pretty much. Bust the whole Chiefs except Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes might wind up proving all of us wrong. He might wind up putting up, monster days for all of them, but I do think it's the right take for both of us this week. I had him for 6 weeks or for 5 weeks. I traded him before last week where he had his best game of the year. I saw the stats week to week. He was not good for fantasy. Patrick Mahomes told you before the year, and I reiterated it. I said I think he's right after week 1. Every single week there's going to be a new wide receiver in Kansas City that's going to explode. Last week it was Juju with the big game, 100 yards, touchdown, best game of the season for him. Before that, he hadn't had a game over 14 points. He averaged 8.4 points per game. I'm not trusting him as a lock and loaded receiver every week. I think there's a very good shot you're going to watch Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think there's a very good shot you could watch McCole Hardman. I think there's a very good shot you could watch, what's his name, Sky Moore, because he's starting to get more of a snap share there. Like, there's a very good shot any single one of those could be the boom receiver. And if you're telling me they're going to split it even, and Mahomes already told you they're going to split it even when they're already going to be the option behind Travis Kelce, it says to me that none of them are going to be plays week to week. You're banking on that boom bust every week from Juju. And I don't think he's shown the consistency to earn a place in your lineup against these tougher defenses. If they're going up against the Detroit Lions, you will watch me smash Juju, and there still could be a very good shot that he only puts on 4 points because his range of target is very short. I'm not trusting Juju this week. I don't think he has the burners that could break this game open. I think none of the Kansas City receivers are playable, but I think Juju's going to have the most hype after last week.
Here's a question for you, Nick. Since you like to ask me questions, I got a question for you. Do you know which NFL team has scored the least points per game through 6 weeks and has not had their bye yet?
6 weeks has not had their bye yet.
We're in week 7, so the team has scored the least amount of points in the league and hasn't even had the bye.
I would guess Chicago.
It is not Chicago.
Not Chicago. Huh. I don't know. I would have guessed Houston, but
I'll give you a hint. They have a really bad head coach.
Is it the Denver Broncos?
It is the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos have scored the least points per game, and I believe it. I looked it up on NFL.com. If they're not the least, they're like 2 or 3 to the bottom. They're very bad. They are also the least touchdowns averaged per game at 1. That's not great. So with that said, they're not scoring points. They're not scoring touchdowns. There's a really talented wide receiver over there that does not have a quarterback or an offensive scheme that's helping him out. Courtland Sutton, you are getting to the bust category. I needed like 7 points from you last week, and you got me like 3. Russell Wilson looks horrible. He's injured. Not even sure if he's playing on Sunday. I wouldn't trust Courtland Sutton with Ripien or Josh Johnson, and I don't trust him with Russell Wilson at this point. This is a guy that you thought you were going to lock and load in your lineup every single week. Now he's a fringe flex guy to me until the Broncos show something more than that. On top of that, they're facing the Jets, 13th best team against the pass. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say it, but Sutton's going to get lost in the sauce this week.
Oh, man, I like that line.
It's going to happen. So this is not one that I want to mess around with. I have Courtland Sutton going in 2 leagues, and I don't want to have Courtland Sutton going in 2 leagues. I'm not looking forward to it because I know he's not going to score a lot of points. And yeah, there you go. Jets, Jets. The Broncos lose this week, and Seattle has a better chance at another great draft pick from Denver.
I really can't believe it because you know how high I was on Sutton before the year. Like, I would have thought lock and load him every week, matchup proof, and I can't believe how bad that team's been. Like, I couldn't bring myself to put him on the old bus team.
It's not even a Sutton problem though. Russell Wilson,
I know it's really not. He's creating separation. He's getting open. Like, it's a combination of head coach, offensive line, and Russell Wilson. I couldn't
even bust Russell Wilson because like he's getting dropped in leagues. He was dropped in 2 of my leagues this week. So it's not even right to bust him because he definitely should not be started. So that is why Sutton is number 1 on my bust list this week. Who is your second wide receiver that you're putting on your bust team?
I have, and I feel like it's kind of cheap to put this guy on there, but
is it DJ Moore again?
No, it's not DJ Moore. It's Curtis Samuel. I do feel kind of cheap throwing.
I don't think that one's cheap
because like he was playing very well, and Wentz is hurt, and now he gets Taylor Heineke, and I would have said, all right, the offense has been going well. Like he's a pretty good player. Like he's looked good. Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm going to show you his stats with Taylor Heineke, and you're going to say, this guy does not deserve to be rostered in your league. In the 5 games he played with Taylor Heineke last year, he caught a total of 6 catches and had 27 yards. There is absolutely no reason to trust Curtis Samuel against the Colts. Against the
Packers. The Packers.
Yeah, against the Packers.
Yeah, the Packers, yeah.
With Taylor Heineke. Like, there's so many other plays, and I know Jahan Dotson got hurt. And like, he should be the sure lock and loaded wide receiver too, and a good game script. But when you show me those kinds of stats, that tells me that this game is not meant for Curtis Samuel. There's no history of Curtis Samuel and Taylor Heineke having that connection. I think if anyone's the play there, it's going to be Terry McLaurin, and I do think we're gonna watch Curtis Samuel fall to the waiver wire within the next 2 weeks.
Well, here you go, Nick, because you know what? Terry McLaurin is not the play this week because Terry McLaurin has scored less than 9 fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. New quarterback coming in. He does have a little bit of history with Taylor Heineke, but Terry was inconsistent last year with Heineke. Going to be inconsistent this year as well. Packers are the 7th best team against wide receivers and have only allowed 2 touchdowns to receivers on the perimeter. McLaurin loves playing on the perimeter. This is not great. Very bad matchup all around. If the Packers are ever going to have their get-right game, I think this would be it. But I'm not believing in them. But if they're going to have a get-right game, I think this would be it. But I personally don't want to touch any of those Washington receivers over there at the moment. So who is your first flex spot that you're putting on your bust team this week?
I am going with a guy I did not like, a guy I said belongs on your waiver wire, but he's actually picked up some steam. I do think he's rosterable, but I don't think he's a play this week. I'm going with Robert Woods. There's a very good shot he comes out off the bye and is electric, gets a lot of targets, puts up some big points against the Colts. But he hasn't exceeded 4 catches at any point this year. He only has 1 touchdown. And we know what the Titans are going to do. We know what they're going to do. Henry, run. Henry, run. Henry, run. That's it. It's the Derrick Henry show. It's always been the Derrick Henry show. It'll continue to be the Derrick Henry show. They go up against the Colts. The Colts, as good of a front 7 as they have, they do struggle with Derrick Henry. That's been Mike Vrabel's game plan. That's what they wanted to roll with going into the year. That's why they drafted Treylon Burks to hope that he would be the next A.J. Brown. Newsflash, didn't happen. Robert Woods, they put him on the team. Guess what? No more than 4 catches in a game. And the Colts rank number 2 to the wide receiver position. Once again, another formula that screams disaster for this guy.
I have Christian Kirk, who I thought was going to make me eat his words after 3 weeks, and then he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. Over the last 3 games, he's only averaged 7 fantasy points, and that's really generous because he had a touchdown last week, very late in the game. Before that, I think he only had like 4 points. So that average would have probably be, I don't know math, but probably be like 2 points lower, I think, without that touchdown. So he's really only averaged like 5 or 6 fantasy points over the past 3 games. Now he's going up against the Giants defense, who are number 1 against wide receivers in fantasy. Bad matchup, bad game script, does not average a lot of points. He's went from a wide receiver 2, I think, over those past, first 3 weeks, and now he's a flex play some weeks, and this week he is not a flex play. Bench Christian Kirk this week. There are much better options out there at wide receiver. Who is your final flex play on your bust team?
So I'm going to do a little bit of a throwback to season 1 of the podcast. So your biggest sleeper of the year, do you remember who he was?
I don't want to talk about it.
No, well, he had a very good year last year.
He did. It was Darnell Mooney, and the coach is horrendous. The quarterback's horrendous. The offensive line is horrendous. I would love Darnell Mooney to request a trade. No,
the coach is very good over there. I know this is a fantasy podcast, so I won't talk too much about that.
I wouldn't say very good. I would say he doesn't have a chance to succeed with that roster.
Yes, okay, that's fair. So Darnell Mooney, last year, his ADP was the wide receiver. It was somewhere between 62 and 70, depending on the format of the league. He winded up finishing inside the top 24. Nick deserves all the credit in the world for that. Guess where he ranks this year? And once again,
70?
It's not had his bye yet. Wide receiver, very nice, Mr. number 69 on the year. Darnell averaging a solid 6.9 fantasy points per game.
Well, I am not. Nice. At least it's really nice. Like, give him credit for that.
He's a nice player, but he's not a nice fantasy play. No. I'm not buying the 12 targets per game or the 12 targets that he got last year. First off, 0 touchdowns on the season. Second off, that was the only game where he exceeded 6 targets. Third, it's the only game where he had more than 4 catches, and they all came against the Washington Commanders. Who does he have this week, Nick?
He has the New England Patriots.
He has Bill Belichick. Are you trusting the best weapon on any team against Bill Belichick? Probably not. Are you going to go trust this horrendous offense? Absolutely not. I would say there's a much better shot Darnell Mooney comes up with 0 points than he comes up with 10 fantasy points in this game. He has absolutely no reason to start. I don't care if you see that 12 target number. I don't care how much I see on Twitter that he's a buy now, that he should be on rosters. No, he's going to be matchup dependent the rest of the year. I told you his rank. I told you his average. I told you all those stats, and I'm not taking the one-off week. He had a Tyler Lockett type week from the last 5 years with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you just said. Just messy. My flex bust of the week is Drake London. I kind of like Christian Kirk, had a really good first few weeks, and the last 3, he's only averaged 6 fantasy points a week. And the Falcons don't throw enough. They also don't run enough. I can't explain their offense. I can't explain how they score points or compete in games. They kind of just do. Because they don't use their stars. They use a committee of running backs, and they use Marcus Mariota. I don't know. I don't have a good way to describe the Falcons. But anyway, they are facing those Cincinnati Bengals who have not allowed a second half touchdown this season. So that means if London's going to score a touchdown, it better be in the first half. But I'm not sure he's going to do that because the Bengals have also not allowed a touchdown to a wide receiver that plays on the outside this season where Drake London likes to play. So if he's not getting a touchdown, he's not getting targets, he's not getting receptions, he's not really scoring a lot of fantasy points. So I would not play Drake London this week. And finally, your tight end bust of the week that I also wanted to bust, did notes on.
Final player,
and then I said to myself, crap, Nick has him too.
I'm going with TJ Hawkinson. This week, he is at Dallas, who I already told you in the boom reasons, every reason to love Dallas this week and every reason to hate the Detroit Lions. First of all, the Cowboys ranked top 5 against the tight end position. And right now, TJ Hawkinson sits at the tight end 5, and he did have his bye week, which is even more impressive. But what's not impressive is that all of his points came in one massive fantasy game, a 40-point absolute massacre without his wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 playing. Outside of that 40-point game, where he had, I think, the best fantasy game for a tight end all year, his scores are 8, 6, 11, and 2. So are you going to trust him with Jared Goff when last week Dallas Goedert had his worst game of the season in a much better offense with a much better quarterback up against this Dallas team? He had that massive boom where I almost want to say you can't bench him, but the tight end position has been pretty deep. I think it's fine to bench him and look to other options. But if you do roll him out there, don't expect the big game. I don't expect the boom. Can he be solid for fantasy? Probably, because I do think they'll be playing from behind all game, but I can't see him having that massive 40-point or even a 15-point boom game.
My tight end bust is Mike Gesicki, facing the Steelers who've allowed the 9th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends. So it's already a bad matchup. He's at under 6 fantasy points in 4 games this season. And my last point, around the league, everybody's saying he's a trade candidate and he's going to be gone by the trade deadline. Well, why would you want to trade somebody that you plan on using? Obviously Tua can throw to him. He can catch a couple balls. Don't get me wrong. But if they don't view him as a pillar point of this offense, then why would there be so much talk about him getting traded? He's the number 3 or 4 option on this offense. Not a lot's gonna go Mike Gesicki's way. Bad matchup. This is just not one to target him. And there are other tight ends out there you could go for. Finally, we're going to do flex on one of my favorite segments that we've ever done. And I think it's a really unique segment that I don't think I've seen anybody else do. So we pick one player from each team and we decide which one we'd rather play in that matchup. Some teams it's easier to find a flex play. Some teams it's not. So let's start it off. Drake London against T. Higgins.
Like I said, this is probably one of the worst ones that there is because pretty much T. Higgins will always be started over the opponent. And
the Bengals don't have a flex player. The Bengals are very top heavy, which is good, but at the same time, they don't have a flex player. So
yep. So I'm also going to ride with T. Higgins here.
Yep, and Drake London. And sometimes we'll even say that's still a good play, but no, London's not a good play.
Not a good play.
Amon-Ra St. Brown or Ezekiel Elliott?
I would roll Zeke out here. I do think he has so much upside and touchdown upside in this game. I don't see a way where he doesn't find the end zone at least once, where Amon-Ra hasn't been the same since his injury.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Alec Pierce or Robert Woods? I mean, Nick spoke about it already. I'm agreeing with him here. I think Alec Pierce is a good play. I don't think Robert Woods is as bad of a play as Nick has made him out to be, but I think Alec Pierce is the better play.
Fair.
Romeo Doubs or Terry McLaurin? I did bust McLaurin, but I don't want to start a Packers wide receiver. I don't even want to start Lazard, so I would play McLaurin over every Packers wide receiver.
I'd still roll out Romeo Doubs. I believe he has 3 or 4 games over 8 targets this year. And I don't see a formula for Heineke to have success.
DJ Moore or Chris Godwin?
Well, anyone that picks anyone other than Chris Godwin, I would have to seriously ask them some questions.
Yep. This is a fun one. Wan'Dale Robinson or Zay Jones?
I'm going to roll out Wan'Dale Robinson. I actually think he's a sneaky good play this week. Just not good enough to make the all-boom team.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'll roll him out. Kareem Hunt or Kenyon Drake?
I'm going to roll out Kenyon Drake. I know I don't love him on the year, but with probably no J.K. Dobbins or a limited J.K. Dobbins, Kenyon Drake just put up more than a 100-yard game. Kareem Hunt's not going to, he's only going to get a 40% snap share. So there's not going to be as much upside as there would be in the number 1 running team in football.
Yeah, I'll say Kenyon Drake if J.K. Dobbins isn't playing. If J.K. Dobbins plays, then I'll still go Kareem Hunt. Courtland Sutton or Garrett Wilson?
I love this question because I love Courtland Sutton. I hate the matchup. And I do think Elijah Moore is not going to get a lot of playing time this week. And Garrett Wilson probably does have the better matchup. But in this case, I'm going to go with talent over situation. I'm going to go with Courtland Sutton. I don't like either play this week, but I do think Sutton would be better. Okay.
I'll go with Sutton as well. Brandon Cooks or Hunter Renfrow?
This was put in before the Hunter Renfrow injury.
Yeah, so let's go with Matt Collins. Whichever one plays, Renfrow or Hollins.
I would take the Raiders receiver too.
Yeah, I'll take the Raiders receiver as well. How about Juju or Ayuk?
I'm going to go with Brandon Ayuk off that massive game.
All right. I'll also go with
Juju
Ayuk.
Off his massive game.
Nick, you forgot my Seahawks game. I noticed that. You didn't want to talk about the Seahawks.
Whoops.
You did. So we'll do one right now. Let's do Kenneth Walker or Mike Williams.
I'll go with Mike Williams.
I'll go Mike Williams as well.
How about Mike Williams or DK? I'd go DK.
Is Keenan Allen playing?
Probably not.
I don't know. I think I'll go with DK, wide receiver 1 on this team. Jalen Waddle or Deontay Johnson on Sunday Night Football?
I like this one.
I'm going with Waddle because the Steelers quarterback situation is just messy. It's so messy. As much as I say Deontay Johnson is quarterback proof, he's touchdown proof. That's for sure. So I'll go with
no touchdowns on the year so far. I'll roll with Waddle as well.
And on Monday Night Football, Darnell Mooney or Jacoby Myers. I'll go with Jacoby Myers, but the quarterback situation over there is a little messy.
Completely agree.
All right. Well, those are our flex on-ems. If you have any other flex questions or any other fantasy questions at all, hit us up on Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to be live, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. YouTube and Facebook is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Twitter is PrimeTimeFFPod. Come ask all your fantasy questions. We'll set your lineups. We'll help you with trades. We'll help you with flex decisions. We'll talk about kickers, defenses, whatever you want to talk about. We'd appreciate that. If you enjoyed this show, and hope you did, if you're listening on an audio streaming platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you're on YouTube, drop a like on this video, share the link with your friends, hit the subscribe button and little bell to get notifications. Keep connecting and interact with us on social media, Primetime FF Pod on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, Facebook and YouTube, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Thank you guys for listening to this show. We'll talk to you Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Can't wait to answer your fantasy questions and to help you prevail in Week 7.